gathering your team.
Hmm.
So here's
The
a question. Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
just going to ask if you, like, say you picture a certain lighting design or effect from a lighting design, and you know a particular designer you've seen that from that person before. Are you
Hmm.
likely to go to that designer or someone who is more likely to come up with something you haven't thought of?
This is gonna. I don't want this to come back to haunt me, but you always pick somebody. You always pick another artist first of all. So it's somebody who's gonna bring something that you never thought of to the table. It's. I think it's terrible that people just do whatever directors want. Yeah, I want to hear their ideas. I know that they're artists in the same right that I'm an artist, and I want to be able to be engaged with them. I want to know if they agree with me about the story and about how the writer's telling it. But any other thing, they should feel free to come with their ideas, and of course I'm gonna guide it as much as I can. But it's the same thing like with casting. Like I said, in my mind, I picture who the ideal actor would be for this role or that role, and then but then when I come to auditions, I want whoever I cast, I want them to be somebody who's going to teach me more about the character than I ever thought. Uh, and it's the same thing like with designers. Like if I remember I told this designer I worked with, his name was Joe Dodd. I told him, oh, I'd like to use a chalkboard, yeah, for this one play. And then he thought about it and he says, well, like that. And then he thought, well, like, what if everything on the set was a chalkboard? And I said, what? Yeah, what if everything on the set was a chalkboard? And I was like, oh, like the floor? Yeah, and then we can do this with that design, and you can do this with that design. And then you can have a chalkboard for when you need a chalkboard. But then this world is something that's being created by the students. And I was like, yes, that's what I've always thought. That, and it says, why not have the whole world being created by them too? And I was like, oh yeah. And then so then that's what I always hope to get from a designer. Yeah, is that they add more, that they have the same kind of unformed hunch that I'm grappling with on how to communicate this story best of all. I mean, best to the audience. And they begin pulling stuff. Now that being said, yeah, um eventually when we talk about being artistic director, it's also your responsibility to challenge, yeah, the artist. So let's say we have a lighting designer that's really good at doing standard, like, I'm going to show what sunlight looks like, so then they know the exact gel to put into the light. They know how high to make it, and then they can make the place look perfect, as during the day, during a daylight scene. And then I think it's also my job as a director to break them out of that. Yeah, to push them a little bit more, to get them to think about things that they didn't think they could do. And it's the same thing with actors, like that, to get them to be realer. I don't know if that's a good word. To get them to show a side of their acting that they hadn't done before. I had worked with this one actress. Her name was Janice Terrakina, and she was always cast as the funny local girl. Yeah, and then and then I and so then I was like, well, like that. Let's have her read let's have her read another character, this character that's part of a tragedy. It's a woman who's abused, and then she finally uh, gets the upper hand and she takes revenge. So getting her to be in a reading for that, like that, she was like, "Are you sure you want me to do this?" And yes, I do. You know, I think it's also your job to be engaged in the play so deeply and to know these actors and other artists so well that maybe this is the one that she's going to break out of this stereotype that she keeps playing. And I think that's part of your responsibility just as a director, not just a artistic director, and you take those chances. Yeah.
So in doing that, whether you're working with an actor or a designer, they're bringing something to the table that you had not seen there, had not anticipated. How do you determine where you are going to draw the line between let's try it and let's see, and potentially you can change your mind, and no, we're not even going to try that. That's not going to work.
Well, I mean, once again, you have to fall back on those first three things you did: what the story is, how the writer is telling it, and the way you imagined it, how the audience was going to be experiencing it. So that the same designer, Joe Dodd, he always wanted to do a show in which all the props were being hung, yeah, by from the ceiling, and the audience and the actors, as they acted, would take it down and start using it. Yeah. And in my mind, I just couldn't. I have never found a play where that's necessarily what should happen. Do you know what I mean? It would take away from the play, I think, rather than add it. The first time that they did Kaiulani, Dennis Carroll, who thinks on a level that I I can barely. I mean, I can't even. All I can do is watch it. He's the Mozart and I'm the Salieri, and if you know that reference, all I can do is appreciate what's going on. All the female characters had a pole. Yeah, they all used a pole that would become different things. It would become a door, it would become a chariot, it would become trees, it would become weapons. And then I see how it all works in the play, but when I directed it, uh, I just couldn't bring myself to do that. Yeah, because to me the story was this, the way that Dennis Carroll wrote it too. He was one of the writers for it. Uh, Having polls doesn't make sense to me. I can't make it work. So I just did it a different way.
Okay, good, thank
Yeah.
you. So how much of the answer to those three questions and the terms that you've come to in your mind, how much of that are you sharing with designers and actors right off the bat?
Um, Once the actors are cast, yeah, then I just tell them, I think this is what the story is. And then whenever we reach a point in rehearsals where something is being tried, I would say that's just a shenanigan, you know, that has nothing to do with telling the story. So I'm sorry, you can't do it. Um, uh, there's something to be said about shenanigans, and I've talked about this before with, I think, most casts and even most designers, is that all actors love doing shenanigans. Yeah, all directors love putting shenanigans in their plays, and all audiences love shenanigans. Yeah, which have nothing to do with telling the story. Yeah, and So it makes it very hard not to put in shenanigans, and I think that that's uh, a young, not young, an inexperienced director's problem at times. Yeah, is that oh my God, like if we drop a slipper over here, like the audience will fall apart and they'll fall on the floor laughing, and then it takes a lot of courage not to put the shenanigan in. Yeah. Now that being said, yeah, some plays are all about shenanigans. Yeah, and some plays have a shenanigan here where it's part of telling the story clearly. Yeah, and then so it's knowing when to put those in. So you can't be too harsh, and then you can't be too loose. You have to find the right balance, I think, as a director. Yeah, and I think that only comes with time and knowing what the story is and how the writer's telling it and how you imagined it.
I have a little story that
Oh
goes along
yeah.
with that. I one time was directing a show, um, and we had already opened, and we were having a pickup rehearsal before our second weekend, and I just wanted the actors to. We wanted to just run through it, but I also wanted them to play with it a little bit. So I asked them to do this as though it is the worst high school production you've ever seen.
Mm.
But you're your character, but uh, playing the show, just really playing at the show. And it allowed them, and I didn't expect this to happen. I ended up making some changes in the show after that evening because they were playing in their character. They were experiencing their character on a completely different level because they were
Mm.
playing in the embodiment of that character.
Yeah. Yeah, to me that's the dream. Yeah. That's the point in rehearsal where you always want to be. And then one of the things I tell the actors is that three things need to happen at every rehearsal. And then one of them is because we're a community theater, yeah, and not like a professional Lord B plus theater or an equity theater, is that and we all have day jobs or night jobs, and um is that the first thing is I call washing dishes, and then that's because when when I was growing up, like I would come home and there'd be food, and then there would be a clean plate, and I'd put the food on the plate, and then I'd put it in the sink, and the next morning there'd be more food, and there'd be a clean plate, and then eventually when I moved out, um, there wasn't any food, so I had to go and find it, and then I would put the plate in there, and then I come back the next day, and the plate would be dirty, and there would be no food again, and then eventually the plates piled up, and there'd be flies and maggots and stuff like that inside the sink, and so then I call it washing dishes, which is basically warm ups. Yeah, I think that everybody needs to come together because we all have different jobs and we all have things we have to do during the day, because we're a community theater and we rehearse at night, that just to bring everybody there mentally and physically so we can all work together. And then so that's the first thing that needs to happen at every rehearsal. And then the second thing is you need to go for it. Yeah, just get up there and just do whatever you try, just let it vomit out. Yeah, just throw it out there, and as long as you're being safe and you're treating the other actor respectfully and safely, then you should just do whatever. Yeah, so then I mean I tell people not to hit each other, or if they come to a point where they think that there should be a slap, to stop and tell me. I'll think about it. But or a kiss even, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think they should just go for it. And then the third thing that needs to happen at every rehearsal is that we stop and we figure out what worked and what didn't work, and we keep what worked and we get rid of what didn't work. And then uh, that's how I try. That's how I've tried to. I've been in a production where that happened, where we rehearsed so hard that we came to opening week and the director said, I want you to just go up there and just do whatever. You don't need to do our blocking. You don't need to deliver the lines the way that we said. Just make up whatever you want to make up. And so we did that. And then same thing. We learned a bunch of things about our characters, about situations, about blocking. And those three things that I think should happen at rehearsal, it's my kind of way to have that happen on the first day, like that, where people are just going up there and trying things that, and then as long as they can understand that I'm going to say, yes, let's keep that, but that other thing, let's not keep that.
So actually that goes to what I wanted to ask you about, is the habits that you have as you are going through the rehearsal process that you, Harry, have. At every rehearsal, you end every rehearsal with that sort of conversation about what worked and what didn't?
No, sometimes we'll run a section of the scene and then I'll stop and go, wait, that was good, but I think, like that, you should do more of this. And we try and rerun it again and I go, even a little bit more, or a little bit less, or, like try a little bit more that you're not going to turn around and look at them. Yeah, I liked it when you tried that. See what that brings, But that being said, I was, when we first started out, I wanted to say that, I have all of these processes or these ideas, and you work with the script and you go as deep as you can. Their responsibility, the other artists, especially actors, is to just go for it. Yeah. My responsibility is to throw everything out that I thought of. Yeah. And be engaged and spark my imagination by what the actors are doing at any given moment. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if we have to, I can fall back on the plan. If nothing's happening, I can fall back on the plan. But the same way that a designer is an artist that's equal to me, except I have to say no sometimes, is that the actors are equal to me. The theater is the actor's medium, like the movies are the director's medium, television is probably the writer's medium, in my opinion. Yeah. Like the old shows like Dick Van Dyke and MASH and stuff like that. There were characters that they were writing around, but the writers created a lot weekly, too. And so I think that like TV is more like a writer's kind of medium, but theater is the actor's medium, and then it's myself, the producing theater, the designers, we're all there. I mean, even the writer writes for actors. Yeah. We're all there to make sure that the actor can do what they need to do in this play. It's one of our responsibilities to make sure that happens, that a set design has enough room for an actor to do a quick change behind it, that that the steps are normal human steps that they take, or if not, then we need to give the actor, weeks of working on a 6-inch step so they don't fall on their face. You know what I mean? It's all about us making sure that the actor can do what they need to do. Yeah. And but that being so, then I mean, yeah, my job is like to toss out whatever I was thinking and try and be engaged in what the actor is trying on stage, which means that, we really have to have really good actors, yeah, to be able to do that. And then the other thing is that my process sounds weird to say, even though I have all of these things that I've done over time, that I've all of these prejudices and doctrines that I've put in my head, each play, each production is of its own kind. It's sui generis. It's of its own species, and that's the scariest thing, I think, for any theater director, is that even though you have all these ways of working, the cast is going to be different, the story is going to be different, and it's your responsibility to come at it as if it's its own thing, and not force whatever force whatever way you're working on that play. And then so then I, I think that's why I've been able to stay engaged so long, is that, like, the same thing is that I have to approach each play as if it's a new thing. I'm not insane. Yeah, I'm not gonna throw everything out that works or what doesn't work, but it's important that that's balanced with, I can't direct this play the way that I directed that play. I can't direct Hedda Gabler the way that I directed Flowers of Hawaii. I have to come at it different again. I have to make it new again. Yeah, in a deep sense, kind of. And then that's why sometimes when we're working here at the theater, I'm off alone trying to break myself of certain things so I can see it clearly, like that, for the first time, myself included. Yeah.
And how do you do that?
What's a good way of saying it? I distract myself. I read something that has nothing to do with the play that I'm working on. I make rice. Yeah, I something to take me out of thinking about it so deeply. And then that's when I hear the voices, and they say, "Hey, Harry, like that. This should happen, or that should happen." You know. And then I try to bring that to a rehearsal. I mean, I'm not. It's not mystical in any kind of sense of the way. It's the same way that, like, something's bothering you, and you're taking a shower, and you turn off the hot water by accident, and you get cold water, and then it's like, oh, and then it's like, oh, I should just say this to that person, or I should just try and do this. It's that kind of thing that you're trying to replicate at any given moment.
So, my last question is, how do you define the success of the job that you've done?
Well, there's he's I what is a good way of saying it? There's a book called, I think it's called Theater, by David Mamet. And David Mamet has, he's lost a lot of credibility for his stance on certain political things. But his writing on theater is, I've always found to be spot on. And the same way that you have to forgive Thomas Jefferson for being a slave owner, you have to forgive David Mamet, every now and then, for his crazy conspiratory ideas. But then there's a book, I think it's called Theater, and then he just plainly asks the question, how do you say that a director has succeeded? Yeah. And then the story was clear. um, the actors in a full house could be seen from every seat in that house, and the actors could be heard from every scene in the house. um, it's those simple kinds of things. Yeah. The um, and the blocking help tell the story. It's those simple things, those are your success. That's your success as a director. Story was clear, the blocking was simple, and it helped tell the story. The actors were well rehearsed, and you could hear them. It's really those things that count for your success as a director. That being said, yeah, there's an effect you want to have on the audience. And then I've often said that what you want is the audience not to talk about the play or the actors or the design or the directing, but you want them to leave the theater and talk about their life. You know what I mean? That to me that's success. Um, and just to add to that is that, you know, you could be doing the most, like, what's one of the most different, like you could be doing Wojciech, you know, like that, and it's about a soldier and his girlfriend, and they have a child together, and he ends up murdering her. Yeah. And then in some versions of the play, he goes back to look for the body because he, not that he feels guilty, but he's like he wants to beat her up some more or something, and he drowns. And then if you do the production right, the first thing the audience thinks about when the lights go out is like, who's taking care of the kid, you know? And then so then it's like it's just horror upon horror upon horror. Yeah. And then if you've directed it well, yeah, the audience goes, wow, I enjoyed myself, you know. If you do it right, it's been delivered in such a way that it twists your guts, but it's like, thank goodness something twisted my guts at that moment. You know what I mean? It's like, wow. And it's almost a surprised reaction by the audience. It's like, wow, I enjoyed myself. I think that's success, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
I think that was pretty good. My neighbors are about to get rowdy over here,
Oh
so
yeah.
maybe this will be a good time to wrap it up. I can hear
Oh,
a
yeah.
party going on over here. Thank you for going through that, Harry. That was interesting. I've been working with you for 8 years, and I still, I've never known that much about the process that you're going through with your shows. I really appreciate you sharing that. And clearly,
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of playfulness that, along with the rules, that.
Oh yeah. The like one of my heroes is Lester Bangs. Please don't hate me, people, that I say that. He was a music critic, and then he says the first mistake of art is to think that it's serious. Yeah.
I like
I
that.
always kind of keep that in my mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Harry. I really appreciate your time, and thank you to
Mm-hmm.
everyone who is watching. And I hope we're all learning as we're going along here, and we'll see you again soon.